Hey, it's Greg, Schmittgens, Bart, Brunscheen, Judd, Vance, and it's HAMTAG!
HAMTAG, we're back!
Woo! We're going to be doing top 5 naval games! Naval games!
Wait.
What?
Let's do Naval War Games instead. Okay?
I think that's good.
Sure.
Naval
All right.
War Games. Let them go.
We're
gonna
good.
do top 5 Naval War Games.
There we go.
All right, and why don't we start?
Okay?
Yeah.
All right. So, I always give a little bit of idea of why I pick the games I do. I do not enjoy ship-to-ship tactical games. I find that a lot of times they're just, you move close, you roll high, that's what happens. So, I don't have a lot of tactical games. So, my number 5 game, I've mentioned it before, Rebel Raiders on the High Seas. This is a American Civil War grand strategy game. There's a lot of Civil War grand strategy games out there. This one focuses on the naval part of the war. Basically, the Union is trying to do 3 things. Number 1, they're trying to stop the blockade runners and the raiders from keeping the Confederate economy going. Secondly, they've got to take all of the coastal forts, the forts up the Mississippi, and they have to take Richmond, but that's almost like a side issue. I mean, it focuses so much on the naval part. Some people don't like it because the Confederates are just moving blockade runners in, blockade runners out, but to me, it's really enjoyable. I rated it very high on my American Civil War list, so my number 5 naval game is Rebel Raiders on the High Seas.
You know, it really shows a lot too on how important that blockade was.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Ever since it's come out by the time we filmed this, but when we did the American Civil War, as good wargaming does, it's brought me more into the American Civil War.
Right.
And I was reading some articles on how important that blockade was. Now, I did a terrible job of stacking. I don't know what I was thinking here, because my number 5 is called Admiral. It's actually a game that came from the Ukraine. They contacted me and asked me to review it. Now, it's ship of the line. It's 16th century to 18th century, and it's very tactical. So it is tactical. Now, this has a lot of the same things as if I told you Wooden Ships and Iron Men. It has that feel, but the pieces were what really intrigued me. The ships of the line, the frigates, the brigs, all the different, they are modeled, and they're actually brown, and this is more of a blue where the sea is, but they're almost like the old snap-on models. There's no glue needed, but you kind of snap them in along with these sails. So I knew it would have a real nice toy feel. And I was hoping Bo, who's my 10-year-old, would get into it. He didn't. I enjoyed it. It's very much feels Wooden Ship and Iron Men with, they call it lighter rules of Lieutenant, all the way up to the Admiral rules, which are a little heavier. There are a lot of scenario-based things. You can even do raids into an island or mess with pirates. From Bombat, and it's a tactical. To me, it feels like a toyish tactical Wooden Ships and Iron Men.
Okay, is there a board?
There is a board. It's squares instead of hexes. It doesn't get as much into the program movement. They use a weather clock and a dice and how it shifts, and then how different ships the weather vane or weathercock has, if it's going to be rougher winds, milder winds, calm or becalmed winds. You can almost, not that it'll show here, but I'll show a picture, red, white, and blue. And so that adjusts some of the movement. And then add this other real neat thing is the ships, although they're maybe it's a 3-decker ship of the line, and it's got a lot of guns on it. You can have, of course, multiple of those ships, but you've got these little cards that then use these little light magnet dots that you use to show if you've fired this row of guns or if you've done this movement. So it was kind of a nice, I actually like that because I am a fidgeter and I'll bump something and move all those around. So when they had these little cards with the little magnets that go on there, it really made it nice again, especially for what I had intended or hoped it was for, which was more for kids. And they actually do say age 6
Okay.
and up.
Okay.
And 2 to 6 players, 30 to 120 minutes. I'd say it's never 30.
Okay.
I think I've covered everything. You can
Okay.
you can paint them, but I think they look gorgeous in their simplicity.
Okay.
Admiral,
All right.
Ukraine. There's Russian rules in there too.
I saw Cyrillic all about this. I studied your box so closely.
I don't know what Nastolnaya means, but the rest of it
Excellent.
was war strategy game.
Alrighty. My number 5 is Wooden Ships and Iron Men. If you recognize, they made a box with a bookcase edition too. 1974, designed by the late great S. Craig Taylor. I got this one about maybe a year and a half ago. Learned it, set it up. Makes me a little sad because I played a solitaire one-on-one and the rules are solid. It's not really, solitaire one-on-one's not the way to play this. I would say one ship on one ship's not a way to play it. It's kind of like Starfleet battles that come down the line. And I'm sorry, I thought this out and then you use the phrase, every time I say it, oh, Greg and Nickel, move close, roll high, when that's what you got. I think what I have this in here for is because I can see what the game can be, and our mutual friend Bubs told us about when he's in the Army and they were playing Trafalgar in their barracks. You get a lot of guys, limited communications going on, fog of war, mass chaos. This thing could be really cool. I wouldn't say one guy running 5 ships per side because your communication's too perfect. You need that chaos going on. And the rule set's pretty solid, really easily. It's a classic that's endured. Some people I've seen prefer close action and some like flying colors, but there's a lot of people that still think this is a standard bearer for that type of game. So yeah, if you got the group, I call it a convention game. If I could get one at a convention, I'm not going to BGG Con this year, so it's going to have to wait. I'd love to get in a big battle with this thing. I think it'd be that good.
This would be, I mean, that was when I learned about chain shot and round shot and grape shot. And yeah, it was a good, I don't think we ever tried Trafalgar, but I know we did 8 on 8, 10 on 10, something about that big.
Yeah, I got a book called 6 Frigates, Ian somebody, T.N.
Okay.
It's about the beginnings of the United States Navy. And I went through that book and it got me in a real big Age of Sail mood.
Okay.
And
Horatio Hornblower got me. I was working on a cruise ship and I was reading Horatio Hornblower because I was on the East Coast and I went and bought that while I was on the ship. And
Okay.
at WBC, there's the one gentleman that has the big table and he's got all the miniatures and he runs these big wooden ships and Iron Man games.
do they play this at WBC?
Yes.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure they still do.
Okay, that's my number 5.
Yeah. Me, right?
Yep.
Yes, sir.
Okay, my number 4 is Empire of the Sun. This is World War II Pacific Theater Grand Strategy. There again, there's many games at this scale. For our air game episode, I picked Fire in the Sky. I chose this one for my naval game episode because I just think, all of the games get the arrivals of units and the strength of units. They get those things right, but I think this one handles the damage, the replacements, the reactions that the fleets could do. I really think, do you still think this is the pièce de résistance for... Okay, so we may see it later there too. Just to let everybody know,
He's being real quiet.
we asked about WBC. I did just a little checking. This game is still played there, and there's about 25. It's averaged more than 25 players in the last 5 years that it's been there. So Empire of the Sun is my number 4 naval war game.
Who designed that?
That guy from NCIS, Mark Herman.
Pay respects. Okay.
That's right.
Still sounds melodious when it comes off your lips.
My number 4, Naval War Game.
Naval war game.
Is Axis and Allies Pacific. Now, everything's shifting here. I'm going to set it down, but I wanted to point out that I kind of call this first edition because in 2009, this came out in 2001, 2009 they came out with the Axis and Allies 1940 edition, and I've avoided that. That uses the cities where you're taking, what do they call them, victory cities, whereas this uses naval bases and I believe air bases that actually make the islands very valuable, very strategic. It can be a 3-player game, which I really like. You can play, if you're the You're India and kind of Britain with all of their Commonwealth, and they're based out of Australia.
Okay.
You're the U.S. and China with some weird things with China where it's more just the ground war in China.
Right.
And then, of course, you can be the Japanese.
Okay.
Thank you for landing in on the Japanese. If I missed that on the Pacific, that would be very
Kind of screwed.
Right. What's the most interesting with this game for me is that there's a lot of different strategies to the point that I personally don't believe it's scripted like if you're doing Japan, you must do this, 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 and this. Now I haven't,
Okay.
I won't say I've mastered it or that I've, played, more than 20 games even, and I haven't played it in quite some time. But there is the feeling, at least that I get, no matter which side I'm playing, is that, there's the problem of I want to do all of this, but I need to figure out what I want my strategy to be, which always gets me thinking, even when the game's over, what if I had tried this, or what if I'd tried that? And I always forget, because the victory conditions I wanted to point out,
I'll tell you about them if you need it.
well, you've got
cool.
if you take Japan, you're going to win, but Japan has to win by denying, I think, 0 victory points by the end of the round, or taking the U.S.
I think they take so many points, and for every 10, they get a victory point, and if they get to, it's like 25, they win. So what happens if the U.S. sits back and stalls and builds up this massive,
because
humongous
they have an
force?
economic model.
And they try to plow through the Pacific. If Japan can score 2 to 3 victory points per turn, this sucker's over in
Right.
8 turns. Or 9, just barely over. So what it will force Japan to do is do the hedgehog strategy, move out, because if Japan's only getting 1 victory point, it's a 25 turn game, it's long. So I like there's a timer on this game. It will never last more than 25. And because that's my problem with Axis and Allies in the world scale, it goes on forever. And it makes you do the hedgehog and then try to hold back, and it keeps the U.S. in a progress of the war type away from Empire of the Sun to keep pushing on them. And that was a cool, but one thing is, if you get this, stay off a Board Game Geek. There is a Halifax Hammer strategy in this game. Just stay away. Makes you happy. It's completely ahistorical.
Okay.
So,
Explain to people what all of the derivation of what a Halifax hammer is.
It's an unbeatable strategy for the Japanese that can win every time.
That comes from.
I'm not going to say it, so that way it's better if they find it.
No.
Yeah, and now
You can find it out on
It comes
DVD.
from. It was developed for few acres. It was conceived.
okay, sorry.
With few acres.
I
of
thought you wanted me
snow.
to tell you the strategy. I'm not doing
It was what was
No.
funny was you were like, not only were you in baseball, you were like at a different, deeper level in baseball, which was cool.
It was
I
like
liked
a double that nobody
Yeah.
would be able to follow.
Yeah,
So
so
it's
if
an
you were the-
unbeatable strategy that came out of a different game, and it exists in this game. And so what he's saying is, don't try to look it up, because
Stay
you'll
away
see
from
it.
Halifax.
I think you should have called it the Rabal nail biter. Japan had the whole atoll of Rabal.
If you stay away from that
was really good
bizarreness,
for my
which
side.
is really bizarre, it's a real
Well,
good
there's
game.
a lot of negativity for this version, which is why they claim they did the revised Victory Point Cities edition, calling it 1940. So, I mean, there's some people that hate this, which is great. Some people may hate it. So,
Okay.
boom, 4.
My number 4, reason I was snickering was, my number 4 is Plan Orange, the Pacific War, 1932 to 1935. This was designed by the great one, Mark Herman. It is based on the Empire of the Sun system, and it's about a mythical war of what would have happened if the United States and Japan went to war in the 1930s. This is before the air power became the dominant factor in the Pacific.
Wow.
It's about the naval. That's why I put this one on here more than the Empire of the Sun, was because this one focuses much more on the naval, including victory conditions that have naval attrition built into it. There's ground forces and air, but the air is very limited in what it can do. And this thing really, like I said, victory is partly based on attrition. It is not Empire of the Sun starter kit. Don't believe people who try to say that. It uses the rule set. It does not have some of the things from Empire of the Sun, has a few of its own, but the core mechanics are there. If you've never played Empire of the Sun, it's a very complicated game. if you have played Empire of the Sun, I wish he would have did what he did with the GN Strike and put little stars on the paragraphs that were different. But fortunately, people on Board Game Geek have went in there and said, if you know Empire of the Sun, read these paragraphs. The harder part of this game for me is the strategies, trying to unlearn all the things I learned in Empire of the Sun, because you're thinking naval power and B-29 atomic victories that aren't going to happen. The Japanese strategy seems, to me, a lot more straightforward, and the Americans are a lot trickier because they had got this mobilization thing, and the Panama Canal's in this game.
4 years.
So the strategy to me as a beginner is a lot harder, and this game is shorter than Empire of the Sun. I think it's 6 turns. So I was hoping there'd be a Consim World Staff game where I could learn from others, or I've tried to ask to find vassal games against experienced American players to see how to do it, because it seems like it's a trickier tightrope to walk.
They show like a biplane flying off of a shortened runway of a battleship.
It's carrier,
kind of looks
flat
like.
top.
Is it still? It's still a full carrier. But obviously the biplanes were used more in that area as scouting ships, not really as, well, I know.
Yeah, they're limited air power. They're not near as dominant. And let's see, by the way, I did say this was in C3I issue number 29. This is not a box GMT or a folio game. So he has his own dedicated game in that magazine.
What area does the map cover?
The map stretches to the United States West Coast.
Okay.
It does not have China, Burma, India in it. It does not have Australia in it.
Okay.
So obviously leaves those parts. No progress of the war.
So it is America, Japan.
Yeah, no war in the Pacific, progress of the war. So that's what I said, you got to unlearn, because I won't play Empire of the Sun if it's not the campaign. I won't play the one-year scenarios. I'll start in 42 setup, but I got to play it, because to me it's so much richer with all that war in Europe and all that stuff. I don't like to ignore them. Well, this is kind of like playing the year scenarios with the rules left out. But like I said, it is not starter kit. Don't believe it for a second.
Because Japan shocks the world when they battle Russia in 1920?
1904.
1904.
Yeah. Teddy.
Okay, and they were amazed. I mean, people are like, whoa, and that kind of put them on the world scene. So
So my number 4, Plan Orange.
Okay, my number 3. Now I'm moving ahead in time. Attack Sub is my number 3 Naval War game. This is a 2-player game of modern-day submarine action. You play individual scenarios. They can be sub versus sub scenarios, or it can be sub versus surface and air assets. Most of the time in the surface air, in the sub air scenarios, the surface player has some kind of helicopters to help with finding and attacking the submarine. It's a card game, so it's kind of like up front under the ocean, where you've got some cards to increase your contact. You've got cards to launch your attacks. Every platform is rated for how good their sensors are and how good their attack suite, their attack equipment is. The decisions you have to make, you have to decide when you've got countermeasures. Do you use those to reduce the chance of the other guy finding you, or do you use it to try and reduce contact after he's got contact? Sometimes you might have the right cards to try to close range to get closer to your target, or to separate yourself from the person who has found you. So this is good. Judd and I played it 2 weeks ago, and we could play like 2 scenarios with some, in half an hour.
Yeah, and he was teaching me.
So this one, again, to talk about WBC, this is still played there. This is one of the getaway games on Sunday morning, and there's still almost 40 players, 38 plus, since 2011 are still playing this game Sunday when they get done with a week of gaming at the World Board Gaming Championships. They get together and play Attack Sub. This is my number 3 Naval War game.
Now, how did you feel just learning it 2 weeks ago and playing it? What were your
I loved
your takeaway?
I loved it. Loved it. Yeah.
So it's on your list, is what you're saying?
No, I know.
We don't know. We don't know what's on the list.
Well,
You thought Empire of the Sun was on
Obviously,
the list.
we don't brief each other when we get to these things.
I was just wondering because you were quiet again, and I thought you would chime in saying you just tried it. My number 3 is Pacific Typhoon. This is like the offspring of Atlantic Storm, they're both trick-taking games. We'll focus on this one. Pacific Typhoon is clearly in the Pacific. during World War II with the Allies against Japan. How is it a trick-taking game? You literally have, you have battle cards, and I gotta always get my terminology between Atlantic Storm, although those are convoy cards.
Right. Convoys in Atlantic.
And
battles that
battles.
you're trying to send forces to win the battle in the Pacific.
So you pull out two, the person drawing those gets to decide which one's going to be the battle that comes down, and then you literally have folks playing in from their hand. Do you want to play as an ally? Do you want to play as the Japanese? And then each card, in descending order, there's a number for their air power, their surface power, and their subsurface or submarine power. So you may have an aircraft carrier that's got a big air wing up here, but it's not so good on the surface, and maybe it has 0 under the sea. But you're playing these in, and then either the Japanese or the Allies are going to win that battle card, and then the victory points are shared, divvied out by whoever had the strongest
Whichever
card.
side wins the battle,
Right.
and then the person who played the highest card on the winning side decides how to divvy up the spoils, which are worth victory points.
And one of the juiciest, sweetest things of this is we may be bitter enemies in one round, and within 3 minutes, you and I are going against Judd on something else, just because I've got the card to pull this off. Or you're sitting in the seat where you want to jump in on this thing, but you don't even have the ability to do so, and you're stuck playing maybe what you know is going to be a weaker side.
Because the other things that are involved besides the where the battle is fought is when the battle is fought, because cards are rated, the battles may be taking place at night or during the day, and there are some cards that have those same limitations. And then there's another factor of whether what year the battle occurred in. You don't get the A-bomb is one of the cards in the game, but you can't use that until 1945. So you have to go after a 1945 battle to use that card, whereas there are others that are only good.
Which is one of the great things. You might have 2 battle cards, and you're like, oh, I can get this into play. And then and the terms are sometimes different too, aren't there? Do they call them fated cards? That this card that I have may have I almost think of it as like it's a kill card for another card, like when Yamamoto was shot down. Isn't that in there? I believe. Is it in the game though? I can't remember.
I think Yamamoto's in there, and the P-38 will take him out.
It might
happened to me.
because they have special weapons.
Okay.
Yeah. Even if it's not, the idea is this: I may have a special weapon P-38 card that if Yamamoto as a special card comes out, I can come in and completely steal that card, take it in as my own victory point card, and disrupt whatever's going on down here. It plays, the game length was a little longer when I'd forgotten because I always get so immersed. 120 minutes, John Cousins and Ben Knight put it out, 3 to 7 players. Totally plays best with higher numbers. I think we even worked in 8 on a game.
It'll work, yeah. This tournament at WBC, they usually they try to seat tables of 6.
Okay, yeah.
So that's what it's designed for, but there's nothing mechanically that limits it to that.
Beautiful trick-taking game with flavor and layers. It's just wonderful. My number 3, Pacific Typhoon GMT.
Okay. My number 3, I'm going old school.
I like
Bismarck. Actually, not quite as old school as, well, yeah, I guess in a way. This is the 1980 edition. There was a 1962 edition. I don't know what the differences were. This is the only one I've ever played. Designed by Jack Green. I don't know who he is, but I'm glad he designed this. It is double blind game. If you're not familiar with the term, think Battleship. Or if you played the old Midway game, there's a screen between you. It's a great cat and mouse game. The German side has the Bismarck and another, I think it's a cruiser, I'm forgetting the name
Prince
of it.
Eugen, I believe.
And the British have air unit scouting and surface ships trying to scout. The Germans are trying to hit the British shipping lanes. So you're trying to find them, tail them, get into battle. When you do, you move to a sideboard that both players can see. It's a tactical board. Don't send in one ship and hope you can put a little attrition on them and death by 1,000 paper cuts. The Bismarck will simply blow you away and keep on moving. You got to bring enough force in there before they can get away, or an event brings in fog and you got to go find them again. So it's and they're trying to maneuver around and get around your forces to get into the shipping lanes and get their victory. So it's great cat and mouse game. And I got to play it at BGG Con 3 years ago and had a blast with the thing. That is my number 3, Bismarck. Avalon Hill, by the way.
Okay. My number 2, now moving backwards in time, the Kaiser's Pirates. This is a 4-player game on the German merchant raiders in World War I, going after all of the Allied merchant fleets, and there is the possibility of the British Navy finding and attacking some of those German merchant raiders. It's a 4-player game. It's basically a game, you've got a hand of cards, you've got some merchant ships out in front of you, you've got your attacking fleet in front of you, you've got a hand of cards, and you go attack the other guy's fleet, what the ships the other player has. So in that sense, there's several games in this genre. There's Enemy in Sight, which is Sail, the Age of Sail. There's one called Naval War, which is World War II. There's one called Modern Naval Battles, which is modern naval. And this one is World War I. They're all about the same. You get cards and you decide, okay, this ship, I can use this ship to attack your merchant ship, or I can use this card to attack your German warship. What this adds compared to those other games, and why I like it, is it adds a capability of multiple attacks, because you can have this exists in some of them, but you can have a minefield attack so that you will damage some ships, then you send your raiders out to sink the damaged ships, rather than just leaving the ships out there for the next player to get the points. This one, it's a big, we pull it out a lot at our game group. If there's 4 of us, can't think of anything else, we'll pull this one out. Our perception is there are some problems with the graphical design. Some of the icons are very small, some of the colors are muted to the point where they look alike, but it doesn't really hurt gameplay. And again, this one is played a lot at WBC. This is 40 people are still playing in the tournament at the World Board Gaming Championship. So this is my number 2 naval war game, the Kaiser's Pirates.
Who designed it?
James Day.
Okay. Naval War almost made my list. I'm curious when you said that. Mm-hmm.
My number 2 is the daddy of Pacific Typhoon, Atlantic Storm. Came out in 1997, Avalon Hill. I had played your copy. Mm-hmm. Loved it, loved it, loved it. As soon as Pacific Typhoon was available, I got it from GMT. Pacific Typhoon is great, but I believe the reason Atlantic Storm is number 2 is I personally believe it's just a little bit tighter. And I had to go source it and pay a pretty hefty sum. I think I paid $70 for this. Yeah, I know. Did you buy it brand new? Your
Sure.
copy, of course,
Sure.
1997. And it was even a little dished and everything, and I was like, yeah, I don't care, because I'd been spotting them, and they were just going for big prices. It's the Atlantic and part of the Arctic as well.
Right.
And you've got the German submarine wolf packs hunting down the convoys that are out there, and the Allies trying to stop those. So you've got convoys that are sailing out that you're now battling over. And the first time I played, and you taught this, and we had a group, it was so novel. I grew up playing trick-taking games with my family, so it was that first genre mixing of the war game with the trick-taking game, and it wasn't, I kind of thought, oh, this will be, we're playing Hearts, but it's with submarines or something. No, this felt the way you join in, it just really, the theme came through in the gameplay.
The theme comes through. There's still a little bit of a mental adjustment that, this time I'm the Germans, and next time I'm the Allies. So it is kind of schizophrenic.
Right.
But, on any given trick, you really, and the thing I like about both of them is there is a built-in, there's enough of a hit the leader capability in it.
Right.
If somebody gets ahead, there are ways where the people can gang up and limit the points that person can have. So I think that helps a lot.
It definitely does. And this one runs, I remembered it running a little tighter than Pacific Typhoon time-wise. And the Geek shows it running 60, whereas Pacific Typhoon was running 120. Now, I know they throw those numbers on there.
And I'll say that the tournaments at the World Board Gaming Championship, they allow 2 hours for a round. They never take that long. They never adjudicate any games. It's done in the time limit.
My other question for you on this is when I looked, it showed Don Greenwood and Ben Knight. Now, of course, Ben Knight's on both of them, but on Pacific Typhoon, he's co-listed designer with John Cousins. Do you know of any of the, design work? I know Don Greenwood was like the lead guy at Avalon Hill.
I did not know John Cousins.
Okay.
What's your question?
I was just curious if, I knew Don Greenwood had a lot of development activity, but I was wondering with the tied-in name, it looked to me like maybe Ben Knight was probably the primary designer,
right.
And I wondered if Don or John just kind of then massaged it into
I don't know. I think they did more than just develop it.
Okay.
I think they were involved more.
Got it. And it was nice to get both their names out there. So that's line number 2, Atlantic Storm, Avalon Hill, 1997.
Okay. Something I wanted to mention earlier, I had 2 old games on there. If you're interested and worried about old out of print, those Wooden Ships, Iron Men, Bismarck, Avalon Hill mass produce these things so much. They are easy to find. My copy of Bismarck, it had on their sticker. I got it at my favorite secondhand store in Joplin, Missouri, $10. You can find these. They're not that difficult. You probably might even have an easier time finding it than Plan Orange, which is only 2 years old. I mean, that's just how mass produced they were. Okay, for my number 2 game.
He was getting a shirt ready on the side there.
For those out there who say, you guys are costing us too much money, making me get all these games, sympathize with you. So my number 2, I have to give credit to where credit is due for Mr. Greg Schmittgens, who if it weren't for him, I would never have known about this game, nor would I have known how to play this game. Attack Sub. I followed Avalon Hill heavily in the 80s. You got their games, you got their catalogs. In the 90s, when I was falling out of gaming, didn't even know Avalon Hill was still around. I didn't know what they were doing, or even I thought maybe We the People was the last game. So when Greg threw this on, I had this, and same with that Gorilla game, and it's like, and then the London Burning, which is now on my radar. Thanks, Greg. And it cost a bunch of money.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Yeah. No trade possibilities are popping up. Anyway, so yeah, I was like, whoa, really? So I found out about this. Looked really cool. Saw it pop up on a Pay It Forward. Jumped on it. Grabbed it. Greg taught it to me. Love the game. Not much more I can say than what he said. The best description I did see for it was up front for naval battles. So thank you very much.
It's funny, when you were so quiet on that, I was thinking, why is he so quiet?
And it is kind of interesting because I was at the very first, when it was called Avalon Con, and that was a new game at that time. And I was familiar with Up Front. I played Up Front, and I heard it was supposed to be like Up Front, but it's got colored dots on and I couldn't figure it out. And then I finally sat down and played it at the first Avalon Con, and it was like, oh, this is pretty cool. So
yeah. It is far, far from a sim, but it's a heck of a fun game. I don't care, there's stuff about sonars and things like that, but it's just a fun game. If you want a real sim of submarine life, it's not going to do it for you.
You're deciding, do I want to risk using active sonar because the other guy might be able to detect that you're there? Yeah, those kind of decisions all the time. Okay, so my number 1 is Atlantic Storm. We've been talking about it a lot. I'll just say a couple other things. The reason this is on my list, and Pacific Typhoon is not on my list. It's kind of what Bart said. The tighter to me is that in Pacific Typhoon, it feels like there is something random happening every turn. There might be some of the ships or ship platforms like the Wolf Packs, their attack factor is a die roll, so you don't know what that is until the end, but then that makes the strategy, your strategy is subject to random events, and there's more cards that, I'm going to hold this card back, and I put one under. I have fog, so I can put this card under there, so the other people don't know what to do. To me, there are fewer random elements in Atlantic Storm, so for me, that makes it a more enjoyable game. In our game group, they enjoy Pacific Typhoon much more, and I think because they enjoy those random factors. Second thing I'm going to say, so there's Pacific Typhoon in the Pacific, Atlantic Storm. In the Atlantic, there is a third game out now called Med Sirocco. I'm not even exactly sure what the definition of Sirocco is, but I think it's some kind of storm that kind of merges some parts of both of them. We played it at the World Board Gaming Championships. I think the play works. There are some graphic issues with playing it. It's hard to read what the numbers are on some of the cards. And there's some things that it decided to add. If you've got a battle, you play 2 cards. If you've got a convoy, you play 1 card. That, to me, don't really add that much. But it is out there, Med Sirocco. And I don't know how long you had this game. It's too bad you couldn't wait for the reprint that's coming.
What? I've had it a long time.
Their Lock and Load has committed to doing a reprint of Atlantic Storm. That hadn't been out since Avalon Hill went out of business. They had the cards of the initial set of test cards at World Board Gaming Championships. I saw them. I didn't play with them. Some people did. So there is a version of Atlantic Storm that is coming back. It's from what I can tell, the play is going to be the same. They're just changing some of the cards graphically. So my #1 naval game, Atlantic Storm.
Very good. First of all, that's great. Yeah, I bought this some time ago, but we are in the golden age, and it's great to hear that it's reprinted. I own Wooden Ships and Iron Men, but may I borrow yours?
Yeah.
May you slide it over here?
I thought you meant.
Yeah, in the future
I thought maybe
play.
you just did
Yeah,
my
you're
tall
We'll
box.
be playing that later.
whenever you want. What's weird is when I went looking for this, because it is my #1 is Wooden Ships and Iron Men. I don't know if I left it in a box because I played it a lot and it's just hard to keep on the shelf or whatnot. But it's my #1. The program movement is something I really love. Everything you said is right on, that when you have a bunch of folks there and you don't have perfect communication, and then you're trying to say, come on, or I can write a little note with just a couple words on it or something to try to get it across. I think it really excels there. For me, it is the first. I'd had Avalon Hill Games, but I go off to work on this cruise ship on the Atlantic Ocean. And I'm reading the Horatio Hornblower series, and I stop somewhere in Maine, and I find a game shop. I see this, and I'm like, I have to have this. And I got a guy that would play it with me on the ship. So it also has a real personal touch where it traveled with me as I was moving around the Atlantic.
And now you threw it away.
No, I still have it, luckily. It didn't go the way of Bonsai's. All right. But I also went and toured, when I first got to the East Coast, we were docked out of Boston for a month, and I got to look at Old Ironsides just from the dock. I didn't get a chance to tour it, but when we were in Baltimore, the sister ship, the Constellation, was there, and I got to go on it and tour it. And so I just really fell in love with the era, both through the literature, both physically being present, and through the Avalon Hill Gaming. And again, the chain shot, the grape shot, the
fouled rigging.
Yes, and then the boarding and
right where you're marking off the the crew as you're
Yes.
killing off each other. Yes.
And it's, fire ships are in this. So lovely game. I think it really holds up well. And wooden ships and iron men.
Number one
for me.
Okay.
And it came out in 1974.
Yep.
So, and you're right, it was, and you said S. Craig Taylor's passed away.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I saw a Kickstarter for Rally Around the Flag, and that was like his last game. He was wanting to finish it out, so that's how I found out. I didn't get the game, but just saw that.
All right.
Alrighty, my number one. I might be cheating here a little. It's not your classic naval war game. There's naval, there's cannons, there's fighting, there's explosions, and warships. Blackbeard.
I thought I was trying to figure out whether to get a pirate game in.
Yeah. This, wow. There's not enough great things I can say about this. Got it in a Pay It Forward a few years ago. Did some quick research. Wasn't that familiar with it. Saw all kinds of great comments, along with a lot of comments. This game was it was 1991. Richard Berg was the designer. There's a lot of comments saying avoid the 2008 one. I've heard that supposed upgrades are actually a big step backwards. Don't know. You'll have to check out that for yourself. But this is not Jake and the Neverland Pirates, Captain Jack Sparrow, Yo Ho Ho, and a bottle of rum. Every pirate in this game except for one was historical pirates.
Yes, it is.
No, I mean,
okay, they are historic people.
Yeah.
But it is still yo ho ho. Let's go to port and have some grog so you'll feel better.
You do, you raid the ship lines, you take hostages, you torture them. If you're too cruel and evil, you might accidentally kill them. You get valuable information to raid the coast. You cash in. You got to find friendly pirate coves. You're raiding ships from all these different countries. You don't want to piss them all off because you'll have nowhere to land. You got to keep somebody on your side. You might be raiding the British, and the French are cool with it. But if you hack them all off, you're in trouble. So you got to pick and choose who you raid carefully. And you got to find ports where the governors of it are friendly to pirates. You got to keep your crew happy. What they call it, revelry and debauchery. I think it's about. You have to take them into port periodically, or you might have to go in and fix up your ship.
Grog.
Yeah, and if you otherwise, there's a mutiny scale, and that thing clicks the end. They throw you overboard.
Yeah, you gotta keep producing.
Yeah,
right.
And a little bit random in its money, because you might hit a ship and just hit the gold mine. Your goal in this is not very war gamey. It's to make a whole lot of money and retire. So I've always is dripping with theme. So I've raised a few eyebrows and I threw it on a Ameritrash list and I said, well, it's not really war gamey goals, but I like what Whiff Wendell said. He calls it an honorary war game. It's like, that works for me. But I will warn you, it plays well solitaire, very well. There's solitaire rules, and you're playing something that resembles bots before there were bots. Otherwise, you probably want to stick to 2 players. There's a lot of downtime of 3 to 4, and it's not we go in a circle. It's determined randomly by cards. So maybe 12 cards go by, and you're sitting there twiddling your thumbs, and you go 3 in a row. So don't get too many. One of the complaints I've heard is people think the rule book's rough. The rules aren't difficult. The layout and finding a rule is hard. I heard it's a Don Greenwood thing that I'm trying to look for movement factors, and I go to combat. Or I don't know, I'm making stuff up. The way I would recommend this, if you're finding problems with this is how I learned this. Go to YouTube, look this game up. Callendale has made a series of playthrough videos as he does. I know he's not everybody's cup of tea, but he plays through it. He teaches you the game while he's struggling to learn it himself. The game is just so narrative driven. I'm like, what's going to happen next? I was on the edge of my seat wanting to see and I was going through these videos, learning the game, seeing his struggles while he was learning it, but I picked the rules up, didn't read the rule book, no problem. Pretty good aids on BGG too that kind of walk you through some steps. And between that, I don't have any problems breaking this thing out every year or so and playing it. And like I said, just dripping. I don't even want to pretend to play with them Uragami things that call themselves business pirates here. So that's my number one, Blackbeard.
And the problem with it, I'm having played it 2-player. I think you lose so much when you just do a 2-player. But you're right, in the 4-player, 3 or 4-player, you randomly determine who has a turn. So you can go many turns and just be sitting there. It would be nice to, have a pool of cards. Okay, of these 6, in a 4-player game, you've got 8 cards. somewhere in those 8 cards, you're going to be able to go twice. You may not, you don't know the order within those. You know, if there'd be something like that, that would fix that problem. But I just think that having more players makes it so much better.
Yeah. The other, on the map, it's got Caribbean, Atlantic coast. You can go right on the
Indian Ocean.
yeah, Indian Ocean, the Ivory Coast. So there's a lot of choices, and you'll be taking on warships, King's Commissioners. Like I said, it's Berg. I mean, Berg, that's his thing. He's into chrome, lots and lots of chrome in his games.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, I played it. It's been constantly, every time I make top 100 lists, it's always in my top 25. Probably always be there too.
Black Bart.
Yeah.
Bartholomew Roberts.
So yeah, I love this game. Can't say enough about it. Question for you guys, I was wondering about, because I didn't know if it'd pop up on anybody's list. Have either of you guys played Flying Colors or Close
I have not
Action?
played it yet.
I had Flying Colors. If I'd known we'd done this video, I'd have held on to it a little longer. I got it. Guy was wanting it on the message boards, asking about, because it went out of print and the cost went to the roof, and he wanted it really bad, and I wrote him into. I sold it to him for a fraction of what he'd get it. But I've heard it was really good, so I figured. Hopefully somebody else can. I told the guy play it and tell me how stupid I was for selling it. And then there's another one I didn't know if you guys played, War Galley. It's part of Great Battles. I saw that at a store and pulled it. I was like, Mark Herman made this? I mean,
You didn't insta-buy?
not the time.
Now here's a question. Has anybody here played Captain Sonar?
Have not played it.
Because I had a buddy
Saw
at
it
work,
played.
okay, who heard we were doing this, and immediately he's like, Captain Sonar's got to be on there. And I'm like, I haven't played it. And I know when we did some of the comments when we did the Air War, where some people commented on some newer Air War games that we didn't mention, and we maybe have played but didn't mention. Clearly, we're heavily into the Evelyn Hill
The
and navals.
there was another one. It was like the old 1970s lots of plastic and it goes for a ton of money, like over $100. Merchants and Marauders, does that sound right, or am I off?
Well, there's a game on that, but that's not old.
No, okay, I'm messing it up with another game.
That's like 2000.
Yeah, I've tried to get it.
Yeah, that's what I'm.
Yeah, okay, I'm messing that up.
2009.
I'd say maybe even.
It's like, I want to say it
5
had the
years ago.
M and N, but I can't remember what it was.
There
but
is
it's,
Merchants and Marauders.
no, but this thing had like big it's dudes on a map type of thing, and I think you're raiding each other's ships and
It sounds
fighting
like
them
Merchants
close.
and Marauders.
But was that loaded with plastic?
I don't remember. I think so.
Yeah, and it's hard to find an intact copy. Anyways, I've always wanted to play that, but it's way
And
too
you
pricey.
was the shirt just used to hide?
No, I
or
was
is
paying
this-
homage to Greg.
Okay,
Hawaiian
so that's
shirt.
the homage
teaching
of
the game,
bringing
yeah.
out.
Yes, teaching, introducing me
Sorry,
to
it was lost on me. I
If it
knew
weren't for
you'd
him,
get
that game wouldn't even be in there.
Got it. I'm slow on the update.
There you go.
All right. Well, that is our HAMTAG
Naval Games.
games.
All right.
See you guys
We're outta
later.
here.
Oh.
Bye.